Flight attendant shouts at a black teen girl. Then she makes one call, and the plane is grounded. Luna, 15 years old, boarded Flight 263 with a sense of excitement that words could hardly capture. Her first-class ticket, a reward from her mother, Selena, a regional director at the Federal Aviation Administration, FAA, was not just recognition for her outstanding academic performance at the National Science Summer Camp, but also a testament to the relentless efforts of a young black girl who was brilliant, driven, and full of promise. She chose seat 3B, clutching her navy blue backpack, headphones resting loosely around her neck. Her eyes gazed out the window, watching the luggage carts roll slowly across the tarmac. Luna didn't talk to anyone. She didn't disturb anyone. Everything about her, from the way she sat to her quiet demeanor, reflected a polite, composed, and respectful young lady. But then Jade appeared. Her footsteps were crisp, her uniform pressed to perfection, and her eyes scanned the first-class cabin with clinical precision. When her gaze landed on Luna, it stopped. No greeting, no smile, just a subtle frown, a flash of suspicion. In that instant, nothing needed to be said. Luna knew. She was about to be tested, not because of anything she did, but because of the color of her skin. And that was only the beginning. A gripping, powerful story is about to unfold. If you want to hear the rest, make sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss the next unforgettable chapter from our channel. Jade Thompson, 41 years old, lead flight attendant with 12 years of service at Pacific Skies Airways, entered the first-class cabin, as she always did before takeoff. Her uniform was crisply pressed without a wrinkle, her hair neatly tied in a high bun, and her heels struck the plush gray carpet with confident precision. She stopped when she saw a young black girl seated properly in seat 3B, one of the 4 most expensive seats, priced at $2,480 for the non-stop flight from Los Angeles to Washington, D.C. Jade glanced at the worn Johnsport backpack and slightly oversized champion hoodie Luna wore, an obvious contrast to the tailored suits, Tumi luggage, and Louis Vuitton handbags surrounding her. She offered a polite smile, but her eyes were full of doubt. "This is first class. Are you looking for someone?" Jade asked loudly, intentionally raising her voice just enough for 3 nearby passengers to turn their heads. A man in an Armani suit at seat 2C squinted toward them. A woman in pearls at 3A subtly furrowed her brow. Luna, 15 years old, barely 5'2", looked up and answered politely, "My seat is 3B." She pulled an electronic ticket from the pocket of her hoodie and handed it over with both hands. On the screen, Luna S. Brooks, first-class passenger, Flight P, SA-263. Jade glanced at it for barely 2 seconds, didn't scan the QR code, didn't check the manifest, then shook her head. "That's not right. This seat isn't yours. Please move to the economy section in the back. Don't delay boarding." Luna stammered, "But this is a real ticket. You're holding up other passengers. Move along." Jade's tone was firm, final. Luna stood up. A 15-year-old honor student, just back from a national summer course in robotics, sponsored by the FAA itself, was suddenly ejected from the seat her mother, Selena Brooks, had booked 2 months earlier, using a government-issued credit card. And the entire first-class cabin, just 8 seats, surrounded by indifferent eyes, witnessed it all in silence. A child being sent to the back, simply because no one believed she could possibly belong there. Luna stood still for a few seconds after Jade's command, but no one spoke up in her defense. Not a single glance of sympathy, not a single voice interjected to ask a question. The man in seat 2C resumed his phone call. The woman in 3A turned away, staring out the window as if she hadn't heard a thing. A female passenger in 4D glanced at Luna, then looked down to rearrange her Chanel bag, her expression cold, detached, heartbreakingly indifferent. Luna pulled her backpack over her shoulder. The loose strap slipped down her narrow frame, but she didn't fix it. She bowed her head and walked slowly down the narrow aisle, her navy hoodie almost swallowing her small figure. Passengers arranging their luggage in the overhead bins lowered their heads to avoid eye contact, as if Luna's very presence was something that shouldn't have happened. Her steps faltered slightly as she passed row 9D, where a curly-haired boy was laughing with his father. She had thought this flight would be a reward, a sign that effort, diligence, and intelligence could carry anyone to the place they deserved. But now, with each step toward the economy cabin, that belief grew dimmer. She found an empty seat in row 28 FARF, right behind the engine turbine. The noise would be loud. The seat was narrow. There would be no personal meal tray. She sat down without lifting her head, her hands folded over her lap as she minimized her boarding pass, turned off airplane mode, and opened her messages. Her fingers trembled slightly as she typed. "Mom, they kicked me out of my seat. The flight attendant said I don't belong in first class." Not even 30 seconds passed before the typing dots appeared. "Typing!" Luna stared at the screen. She knew her mother would not let this go. But in that airplane cabin, one thing had already become clear. No one needed to shout at her that she didn't belong. Silence had done it for them. Perfectly. Just 43 seconds after Luna sent her message, her phone screen lit up with a single line. What happened? Selena, her mother, wasn't just a concerned parent. She was the regional director of the Federal Aviation Administration, FAA, overseeing aviation safety and compliance across the entire southern coastal region. She didn't need a lengthy explanation. Luna replied, "The flight attendant said I didn't belong in seat 3B. Didn't believe my ticket was real. Told me to go to economy." Moments later, at the FAA Operations Center in Dallas, a new alert flashed on the radar screen. Passenger displacement alert. Flight 263, Category 2 potential violation. The status light changed from green to red. An action request was initiated directly from Selena's office. Hold aircraft at gate. Do not push back. Immediate compliance inspection requested before departure. In the cockpit, Captain Monroe had just ended a routine intercom call when the emergency crew phone lit up. The screen read, "FAAOPS, URGENT." He picked up. The voice on the other end was steady and firm. "Captain Monroe, this is a senior FAA dispatcher. We've received a high-priority compliance complaint involving your flight. Cease all taxi operations. Do not proceed to the runway. Hold position. A team is en route." "Reason?" the captain asked, narrowing his eyes slightly. "Potential violation involving flight attendant conduct and passenger rights. The affected passenger is the immediate family of the FAA's regional director. We request full cooperation." Monroe hung up, took a deep breath, and turned to his first officer. "We're not going anywhere." In the cabin, the sudden stop of the taxiing engine caused several passengers to look up. Then the PA system came on, its tone carefully measured. "Ladies and gentlemen, Flight 263 is holding at the gate due to an urgent operational inspection request from Central Dispatch. We apologize for the delay, and will provide updates shortly." But this wasn't just a technical check. This was a system alert, a silent yet powerful declaration. No one has the right to eject a young girl from a first-class seat just because of the color of her skin. And when the FAA steps in, everything stops. Jade, the lead flight attendant on Flight 263, with 12 years of experience and a commendation for effective first-class management, stood at the front galley, sipping from a paper cup. Her expression barely concealed a sense of smug satisfaction. She believed she had just corrected a mistake, at least in her mind, and was confident she had done the right thing. She turned slightly, tidying a stack of neatly folded napkins, the corner of her lips curling into a proud, almost mocking smile. The footsteps of passengers passing by didn't faze her. In Jade's world, she was the authority of the cabin, the one who set the standard. Nam, a male flight attendant around 26 years old, with only 9 months in the job, quietly approached her. His voice was soft, but clear. "Jade. I think the girl earlier. I clearly saw her ticket said seat 3B. First class." Jade set her cup down, turned her head, and raised an eyebrow. "You're new, aren't you?" "I can tell a fake ticket just by looking. She sneaked up there. Not everyone can afford first class. Don't interfere in things beyond your training." Nam hesitated for a moment, then took a step back. But his expression remained troubled. "It's just that..." She didn't argue, didn't raise her voice. She just walked away. Quietly. Jade waved her hand dismissively, as if swatting a gnat. "Good thing I handled it early. Kids like that cause trouble in premium cabins. We get marked down in performance reviews right away." She didn't realize. Every word, every glance she had used to judge Luna was now turning inward, pointing at her own career. Because she wasn't just wrong. She had misjudged the one person no one should ever underestimate. At the FAA Dallas Operations Hub, the Category 2 violation alert continued flashing. The flight designation, F263-ALT, was now highlighted in red. Sender code, Selena B., Regional Director. In the cockpit, Captain Monroe had just confirmed with the regional controller. The ACAR system, Aircraft Communications Addressing and Reporting System, began logging the full stop order into the flight's technical journal. But in the galley, Jade continued adjusting the napkins, her expression composed. In her mind, this was just another small task completed. A potential disruption, quietly removed. She had no idea. She had just triggered a federal investigation. And that fleeting moment of victory was the exact second her career began to unravel. 8:42 a.m., flight of Habab 263 operated by Atlantic Sky Airlines had completed boarding procedures. Scheduled to depart at 8:55 from Dallas-Fort Worth, DFW to Seattle, the aircraft had just begun to ease away from the passenger boarding bridge in preparation for taxiing when an internal message flashed across the cockpit screen. ACARS alert, FAA hold, operations, suspended pending compliance check. Captain Monroe, 52 years old, with nearly 19,000 flight hours on various commercial aircraft, exhaled deeply. He had never seen an emergency FAA hold signal without a formal cause like this before. Proactively reaching out via the internal priority channel, he received only a short directive. Passenger linked to FAA Regional Director. Full cabin procedure review required. Do not take off. Monroe turned to the first officer and gave a subtle nod. This was not routine. He stood up, opened the cockpit door, and picked up the cabin microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is Captain Monroe. Due to a technical request from flight operations, we will be holding at the gate for a few minutes to verify an operational matter. We kindly ask for your patience. We'll provide updates as soon as possible." The cabin fell into complete silence for a few seconds. Then it started. "What kind of operational matter? Is it weather-related? I've got a connection in Denver. I need to know the timing." A man in seat 2C began checking his watch repeatedly. A woman in row 5 called a flight attendant to ask for details, but no one had a clear answer. In the last row of the economy cabin, Luna stared intently at the message from her mother. The screen displayed a single directive from Selena Brooks, FAA Regional Director for the Southern Division. "Don't speak to anyone. Don't move. I'll handle everything." Luna set her phone down and took a deep breath. She didn't cry, but her heart pounded, not from fear, but because for the first time in her life, she truly understood something. Identity isn't granted by how people look at you. it's claimed by truth. From the first-class cabin, where seat 3B now sat empty, an elderly passenger turned and glanced around. He had seen Jade force Luna to leave, and now, as the plane sat still more than 10 minutes past schedule, he quietly said to his wife, "I think this has something to do with that little girl." No one knew that on the ground. Within just 14 minutes of Luna's message, the aviation security system had pinpointed her flight time, seat, and ticket history, pulled the past 3 years of behavior evaluations for lead flight attendant Jade, issued a stop order alert to the Dallas Flight Operations Center. The aircraft remained grounded because of one mistaken look, and a 15-year-old girl, backed by a mother who would not be ignored. 8:59 a.m. at the Atlanta Regional Headquarters of the Federal Aviation Administration, FAA. The internal alert system flashed red with a command that rarely appeared. Priority flagged. Flight 263. Code DSI. Discrimination suspected incident. Immediately, Senior Supervisor Marion Trevors, with 26 years of FAA experience, made a direct call to the emergency response room. Flight 263 just received a signal from Regional Director Selena Brooks. Priority Level 2 flagged. I need a federal compliance investigation team and aviation security representatives en route to DFW. Prepare to meet the aircraft at Gate C-12. Within 11 minutes, a task force of 5, consisting of 1 federal passenger compliance investigator, 2 FAA security agents, and a representative from the Flight Attendant Conduct Oversight Unit, was on the move. A black SUV with government plates departed headquarters. The reason for the emergency? An 11-word message sent by a 15-year-old girl named Luna Brooks, daughter of Selena Brooks, the FAA director who oversees nearly 4,800 flights each month in the southern U.S., known within the agency as the woman who never lets injustice slide. At the Dallas-Fort Worth ARTCC Air Traffic Control Center, the communication log from Flight 263 was preserved and secured for behavioral review of the crew. A technician was assigned to retrieve passenger cabin footage, especially from first class, where seat 3B had once been occupied by a young girl, then emptied after she was forced to leave. Meanwhile, in her private office, Selena Brooks hadn't made a single phone call. She hadn't yelled. She hadn't demanded anyone be fired. But she had already filed an emergency federal complaint, flagged under Behavior Code 7.41. Crew discriminatory conduct with potential psychological impact on a minor passenger. "I don't care what they thought," Selena told her assistant. "I only care how they're going to deal with the truth." The tablet in front of her displayed the full Flight 263 crew manifest, behavioral histories, and internal reviews of each individual. One name stood out in bold: Jade Morrison, lead flight attendant, 12 years of service, 2 internal warnings never made public, both related to inappropriate treatment of passengers of color. By 10:02 a.m., as Flight 263 remained stationary at the gate, passengers still unaware of the storm building outside, one message sent by a 15-year-old girl, had triggered the response of 2 of the most powerful agencies in American aviation, the FAA and the National Passenger Rights Commission. And a $320 million aircraft with 172 passengers and a crew of 7 was being held not because of a mechanical fault, but because of prejudice. The cockpit door clicked open. Captain Monroe, 52 years old, with over 8,700 hours of commercial flight experience, calm-faced but resolute, stood and pressed the intercom button. "Jade Thompson, report to the cockpit." Immediately. In first class, Jade flinched. She straightened her uniform, tucked her hair behind her ear, trying to maintain composure. But the looks from the other flight attendants, especially Nam, the youngest member of the crew, carried a heavy, unusual silence. Stepping into the cockpit, the door closed behind her. Before she could speak, The captain pointed to the communication headset linked to the FAA regional coordinator in Atlanta. "They want to speak with you." Jade raised the headset to her ear. On the other end was a woman's voice, sharp as steel, from the FAA Operations Center. "Flight Attendant Thompson, this is Dana Ellis, Lead Coordinator, FAA. I'm monitoring Flight 263 under direct directive from Regional Director Selena Brooks. I need a clear confirmation. Did you personally scan the e-ticket or check the seat manifest for passenger seat 3B? Jade swallowed. I looked at the ticket. It didn't seem right, so I asked the girl to move. The voice remained firm, unmoved. This isn't about impressions. The question is, did you verify using a device or through the system? No. So you denied a 15-year-old first-class passenger with a valid ticket, without scanning the barcode, without notifying the flight deck, without checking with ground staff, based solely on your personal judgment? Jade clenched her hands on her thighs. Her voice shrank. I just had a feeling something was off. And what exactly felt off? Her skin color? Her clothes? Or the fact that she didn't look like the kind of first-class passenger you're used to? There was no answer. Only the sound of tight, heavy breathing inside the cockpit. Captain Monroe glanced over, not scolding, not accusing, but with an unmistakable look. Disappointment. From the other end, Dana Ellis stated clearly, "This conversation is being recorded. Upon landing, you will be removed from duty for investigation. All discriminatory conduct and personal bias, if substantiated, will be prosecuted under FAA Statute Section 139B. Jade removed the headset and stood up slowly. She said nothing. But as she opened the cockpit door and stepped out, the confidence of her 12-year career seemed to crumble behind her. 10:14 a.m., the cockpit display refreshed with a new directive. Suspend all movement. Flight 263, awaiting Federal Response Team. Passenger notification pending. In the cabin, a ripple began to spread. Murmurs, curious glances. Someone asked a flight attendant, "What's going on? Why haven't we taken off?" But the only person who knew the full truth sat quietly in the last row. Luna, phone resting on her lap, eyes fixed on the window. No tears, no complaints, just waiting. Because she knew her mother was coming, and so was justice. The cockpit was utterly silent. Captain Monroe set down his headset, deep lines creasing his brow after ending the second call from the FAA Emergency Oversight Board. On the screen, Flight 263 had just been flagged with a Priority Level 1 code, meaning all operations must be suspended until a federal investigator made contact. He turned to the first officer. Notify the entire crew. No further passenger service until further instruction. I'll make the internal announcement. 10:20 a.m. Lead Flight Attendant Jade Thompson returned to the passenger cabin. She was no longer the confident figure who had boarded the plane earlier. Her face was pale, her gaze unfocused. But it wasn't over yet. The captain picked up the intercom, his voice firm. "Ladies and gentlemen, Flight 263 has been instructed to pause while we resolve a compliance situation. The aircraft will not depart until the verification process is complete. We ask for your patience and cooperation." The sound inside the cabin shifted. Whispers turned into murmurs. Passengers looked around, trying to guess what was happening. In first class, a male passenger asked Jade, "What's going on? Is it a mechanical issue?" Jade shook her head, offering no reply. She was trembling, truly trembling, because deep down, she knew. This wasn't about mechanics. This was about trust, and the truth judged through bias. 10:22 a.m. The cabin door clicked softly. A young flight attendant named Nam approached Jade. He spoke quietly. "I just heard from the auxiliary crew. AA reps are en route to the airport. There's an order to suspend the primary crew. They're coming for you." Jade clenched her fists. She sank into an empty seat, struggling to swallow gulps of anxious air. Things were spiraling out of control. 10:24 a.m. In seat 29F, Luna looked at her phone. Her mother, Selena Brooks, had just sent a final message. "The FAA administrator has authorized a federal investigation. Aviation security is approaching the aircraft. You don't need to say anything more. Everything is in motion." Luna closed her phone and rested it on her lap, eyes fixed straight ahead. She didn't cry, but her palms were drenched, not out of fear, but because she knew. An earthquake had just been triggered in the aviation industry by one misplaced glance. 10:25 a.m. The boarding door opened once again, but not for a late passenger. Two figures appeared. An FAA officer in a black uniform, nameplate reading Rhodes's, and an internal airline safety investigator with a federal agent badge. They stepped onto the aircraft amid a breathless silence. Every passenger turned their head. Questions turned into tense murmurs. All eyes locked on the pair who had just boarded. Captain Monroe exited the cockpit to meet them. A brief nod was exchanged. No words were needed. Everyone understood. This was no longer about a technical delay. "Passenger Luna S. Brooks?" Rhodes asked. Luna quietly raised her hand. Rhodes approached, his tone calm. "You'll be the last to leave the aircraft. Please remain seated. Ms. Selena Brooks has delegated full authority to us." Rhodes turned to the airline investigator. "Please escort Ms. Jade Thompson from her position. She will be taken to the interview room at Security Gate 5. The entire cabin held its breath. Jade stood up. Her eyes had nowhere left to hide. The passengers who had once witnessed her shout at a teenager, now looked at her like a stranger, someone whose mask had just been removed. She walked down the aisle. No one stopped her. No one spoke. But the air was heavy, like lead. Luna watched, without anger, without revenge, just a look that would not be forgotten. Behind her, Nam, the young flight attendant, gently gripped the water tray in his hand, nodding slightly as if to say, "Justice is real." 10:30 a.m. The aircraft door closed once more, but this time, it closed on the silence of a chapter that had just ended. 10:32 a.m. The cabin fell into a breathless silence. After Jade Thompson was escorted off the aircraft, many passengers sat quietly, no longer daring to glance at the girl who had been humiliated, but still sat upright in the back row. A man wearing a Rolex in seat 2C, who had earlier been enthusiastically video chatting, now silently fiddled with his fingernails. The woman in seat 1A, draped in a Hermes scarf, and once warmly chatting with Jade, turned her face the other way, pretending to scroll through Instagram. The same faces that had once looked pleased, believing order was being upheld, now appeared unsettled and quietly reflective. Luna remained still. Her hands rested on each other atop the tray table. She didn't need to speak. She didn't need to remind anyone. They had seen it. They understood. It had happened right before their eyes. 10:40 a.m. Luis, the only young flight attendant on board, walked to the back row. Gently, he placed a glass of water on Luna's tray table. "You did very well." She nodded, offering a small smile of thanks. No words needed. In the cabin, passengers slowly began turning their gaze toward the back. Luna had quietly become the center of the entire flight, not because of noise or confrontation, but because she had just restored the balance of justice on board. And this flight, it was now clear, was no longer just an ordinary flight. 10:42 a.m. The cabin door opened once more. Two personnel from the FAA compliance office, one woman in a black suit with a name tag reading R. Rhodes, and a man in plain clothes wearing a federal badge, stepped aboard. They said nothing to the passengers. They walked directly to seat 3B, bowed slightly, and spoke quietly to Luna. Luna S. Brooks. We've been assigned by the Passenger Oversight Bureau and Director Selena Brooks. You will be the last person to disembark the aircraft. She nodded. No words. No questions. From the business class cabin, several passengers began to understand. This girl wasn't just someone. She was the one who had changed the entire flight. 10:45 a.m. Luis returned to the main cabin, his tone serious as he spoke over the PA. Ladies and gentlemen, please remain seated. We are preparing to begin the disembarkation procedure under FAA direction. The entire cabin fell silent. As passengers filed out one by one, many glanced toward the back row, where Luna still sat, composed, just as she had at the beginning. No one said a word, but every look carried acknowledgement. A middle-aged woman paused, gently placed her hand on the back of Luna's seat, and whispered, "You didn't speak out loud, but the entire nation is listening." Luis stood nearby, his voice soft, like an older brother. "When she steps out, all eyes will follow you. But don't worry, you just walked into history, without ever needing to shout." Outside, a black SUV with federal plates waited at the bottom of the jet bridge. The sky remained blue, the engine still quiet. But the atmosphere, it was shifting, in a way that no one could ignore. 11:12 a.m. Flight 263 remained stationary at the gate. All following flights had to be rerouted. Atlanta Hartsfield Airport recorded delays for 3 flights due to FAA operational hold. On social media, the video of Luna being asked to leave her seat was being shared at a rate of more than 2,000 shares per minute. Within just 30 minutes, the clip had reached over 1.2 million views. A media analyst reposted it with the caption, "We're not just talking about a passenger. We're talking about how an entire industry treats the quiet existence of Black lives." 11:25 a.m. Selena Brooks, Luna's mother, released her first official statement on her LinkedIn account, followed by over 120,000 people. "Luna S. Brooks is not just my daughter. She is a citizen, a customer, a person deserving of respect. What happened today is not a simple operational mistake. It is the result of prejudice that never truly left our skies." The statement ended with the hashtag #equal altitude for all. Major news outlets began submitting interview requests, but Luna declined all television invitations. She accepted only one, a small talk at the local community center where nearly 40 middle school students attended. She stood before the class. No uniform, no grand stage, just a whiteboard and an old microphone. I didn't do anything special. I just refused to be treated like I didn't matter. A student asked, "What if she never apologizes?" Luna smiled. "Then I'll still sit in the seat that belongs to me." After the talk, an 11-year-old girl whispered to her mom, "I want to be like her, brave enough to sit where I belong." On the wall, a new slogan was printed and posted throughout the center. "Courage isn't shouting loudly. It's daring to exist, where others say you don't belong." Some flights never take off, yet they bring an entire industry down to earth with the weight of truth. The story of Luna S. Brooks is not just about a seat. It's about dignity, the silence that speaks justice, and a generation no longer willing to be underestimated. Don't let silence bury the truth. If you believe in human dignity and the power of truth, share this video. And don't forget to like and subscribe to Black Strength Stories, so you won't miss the next story that just might change the way the world sees.